In this video, we'll be concerned with customer analysis. In order to gain competitive advantage, organizations must put their customers first and ensure their customers remain loyal and continue repeat purchases. So it's essential that an organization recognize who its customers are, and in particular customers who have bought from the organization or bought its products in the past, to try and continue to form a relationship with those customers so that they can make repeat purchases. Repeat purchases are easier to deal with in terms of marketing and commitment and resources than trying to gain new customers. So organizations must put their customers first. They must see the customers as essential for their own existence. They must recognize the customer's power. They must recognize the importance of the customer for the future of the business. They must understand their customers in order to design products and services around customer needs. There's no point in making a product that the customers don't want, because they won't buy it. If they don't buy it, it's just a waste. It's a futile activity. So it's important to determine what the customers want in terms of the design of the product, its functionality, the various attributes of the product, its price, its delivery, its after-sales service. It's important to work out what the customers want and try to design the products around those customer needs. Customer analysis is concerned with customers' needs. That's the primary concern, trying to see and trying to determine what the customer needs are, and then designing products that meet those needs and analyzing satisfaction that has been generated as a consequence of purchasing the product and using the product, analyzing the satisfaction levels, perhaps conducting surveys amongst customers and asking their opinions. But it's important to work out what are the motivations of the customers and the relationship they share with an organization. So it's important to work out, why do the customers buy the product? What do they like about the product? What do they dislike about the product? How do they see the organization, and so on. So it's important to collect data, analyze data, and get a better understanding of the customers. Because after all, if the customers don't buy the product, as I said, the company will not exist. The organization will not exist. Customer analysis is concerned with the following questions. Who are my customers? Who are we dealing with here? It may sound a very simple question, a trivial question, but it's essential to try and work out who are the customers in terms of their backgrounds and their desires, their needs, their requirements. Who are they? It's not just the people we see or we could observe in shops buying products or buying it online. It's not just that. It's who are they? Do they belong to a particular segment? Have they particular requirements? Where are they? Are they living in certain areas, geographic areas? Or are they, do they occupy a certain socioeconomic ranking? Where are they in terms of some reference points? It's important to have a fix on the customers. When do they buy the product? Is it highly seasonal? Do they only buy it at certain times, or do they buy it throughout the year? Is there a peak demand sometimes and it falls off afterwards? So when do they buy? How does the product fit into the overall buying patterns of the customers? And what do they want? What's their main concern? Is the concern the price? They want cheapness. Or do they want quality? Do they want design? Do they want modern design? Do they want functionality? What do they want? What's their primary concern? And what do they buy? Not just perhaps the product that we're talking about here, but what other products do they buy? Because this may flag up their status, or the type of personality they've got, or the particular types of customers that are attracted to the product. And how do we learn about customers? The company needs to have some mechanism to discover customers' needs and requirements. It could be done by survey or by observation or feedback from outlets or agents. So how do they? How do we get information about customers? And once we've got the information and we know about the customer, how does the organization become customer focused? How does it use the information that is collected to influence the way it works, the products it makes, the research and development processes that it goes through, and how are they focused on the customer needs? How easy is it for the customer to contact the organization? Is there an after-sales service? Is there a customer care service? How does the organization fit in terms of customer requirements, customers' expectations? And how does the organization adjust to more readily meet the requirements of its customers? So there are some ideas about the type of customer analysis and the type of questions that customer analysis could look at. Let's go through some of these in a little more detail and just widen the discussion slightly. We'll start with customers. In customer analysis, it's important to identify the customers, who they are and what are their needs. So it's important for an organization to have someone in mind when they make the product. It's pointless just making the product almost for the fun of it. It's pointless just making the product and putting it out there, keeping their fingers crossed. They must have some customers in mind, and those customers should have been identified. And organizations interact with different consumer groups. For example, there are customers. In other words, these are individuals who buy the product. Now, these are the customers of the business, but they are consumer customers. They're the ones who buy individually. These are perhaps households who buy the product. That's one type of customer group. We could have business customers for a particular business may sell its products to other businesses. It may make components and sell the components to other businesses, or it may make certain products that are only used within business. So consumers are not interested in those. We're not interested in them, but there is a big market for them, but only businesses will buy them. And there could be non-profit customers. So let's have a look at these in turn. Let's look at consumer customers, the individuals and the family units who may purchase the product, and go on to look at business and non-profit later. Let's start at the consumer ones. So the customers, well, consumer customers. Customers purchase goods for their own family, or they purchase for themselves and they consume it. So these are individuals who purchase for themselves or for the family unit. Now they're one type of customer. The customers, generally speaking, have a degree of brand loyalty towards products. They go shopping perhaps every week. They get to know particular products and they know which products work for them, and they build up a loyalty to particular brands. So they always tend to purchase the same brand. So it's very difficult for businesses coming in to start to win over those customers. They have to break that loyalty. And that could be very difficult. Now, business customers, well, these customers purchase goods for business purposes. Goods are purchased to make merchandise to be sold to the end consumer. So, in a sense, all production is aimed at the end consumer, because the end consumer is these are the people who buy the product in the end, and what they pay for it goes to pay off the wholesalers and the retailers and the producers and the people who supply the raw materials and the people who supply the machines that go to turn the raw materials into the products. So everyone depends on what the final customer pays. But further back on the chain, businesses do deal with each other, and they make products for other businesses. The demand for products is influenced by end products. This affects brand loyalty as customers are interested in final products. So, as I said earlier, customers tend to be very influenced in the final product. That's what we purchase when we go to the shops. We tend to be influenced by brands. So these are issues for the marketing departments to deal with, to try and break our loyalty to particular brands and get us to purchase more widely, perhaps purchase output from new producers. But business consumers are ones who buy from existing businesses. That's a much smaller market. There are fewer businesses selling to each other than there are customers perhaps buying the final product. Sorry, I jumped a bit too far ahead. There is more emphasis on suppliers, product specification, prompt delivery, and the price of the goods. With business customers, they are very keen to get the products according to particular schedules that have been agreed. It may not necessarily be just in time, as discussed elsewhere in other modules, but it may be that businesses want deliveries on a certain date because their production depends on it. So when one business buys from another, they are buying perhaps components that's going to be used in their own production processes, and they want it delivered on the time agreed. So there's greater emphasis on suppliers and on delivery. But there's also looking at the price of the product, because that price must be recouped by the next business, the business who buys, one business who buys from the other. The final business must recoup all of those costs. So it must keep its prices down. And of course, the product itself should be to a high specification, because that in turn will show up in terms of the quality of the final product produced. So business customers are very precise about their requirements, and they are very meticulous about the way they examine deliveries and look at the quality of the product, look at the price of the product, see what's in the market. They're going to use this product to manufacture a product which will be sold to the final customer. So they need it to be good quality, on time, delivered efficiently, and so on. Now, non-profit customers. Well, this is just simply a different type of customer base. It's what the Americans call not-for-profit sector. This may include local communities, charities, some TV stations, radio stations perhaps, run on a charity basis, credit unions, schools, hospitals. These are customers who buy products, but they don't buy the products in order to make a profit, to sell it on to make a profit. They're buying it perhaps to use within within their own functions, within their own businesses. In a sense, non-profit customers are in a sense business, except they haven't got a profit objective. They make purchases, generally speaking, for use within the community or within the particular aspect of their concerns, what they're aiming to do. They buy the product for use to enable them to fulfill their objectives. So they may buy products to give away in the local community, or to help animals, or to promote education within the community, or whatever. They're not there to make a profit. So where are the customers? Well, it's important that organizations have an understanding of their customer base and where the customers are located. Clearly it's important. If it's a big country, let's say America, and the customers are on one side and the business is on the other side of America, that could be expensive. Expensive for delivery and for running the business. So it's important to know exactly where the customers are. If the customers are local, depending on the nature of the business, that may be more advantageous. Essentially, it's important to know where the customers are and to know what sort of cultural influences are on the customers within that area, and what are their requirements given they're living in that particular area. Most organizations maintain records, invoices, warrant cards, loyalty schemes as a means of collecting customer data. The marketing department should conduct surveys and try and make observations and talk to outlets and so on within different areas to try and get a picture of the type of customers they've got and how many customers, what's the likely size of the market within that area, and so on, and feed this back to the company so they're able to more precisely target areas. The information is important for marketers as they're able to contact customers for promotions and feedback through surveys. So collecting data about customers is important to try and find their address and be able to contact them. There is a danger, however, that the contact may be seen as spam, it may be seen as undesirable. People don't want companies to intervene in their private lives so much. So it may backfire. But if customers are given some incentive to participate, they may be willing to do so, and thereby the company can gain some information about the customers and the customer requirements within that area. So when do customers buy? Well, marketers must identify buying patterns and when customers are most likely to make purchases. It's important to know when customers are likely to make purchases, particularly if there's an event which causes a lot of sales at a particular time of year. If that's the case, then the business must build up a stock of the products and have them ready for sale at that time. Now, building up a stock like that is costly because there's raw materials, production, labor, everything has to be paid for in advance. So it's a costly exercise. And of course, holding the stock is costly. And it's also a risk that the company has now produced these items for sale at a particular time in the future, and perhaps the customers' tastes have changed. So they have produced products which are not successful in the marketplace. So there is a risk involved as well. Buying patterns help in meeting customer needs by adapting production and distribution systems to meet demands. So trying to analyze buying patterns can give some sort of help. Sometimes companies just make a general provision. For example, the grocery shops who are open 24/7, some of them, to meet working families' requirements. People work throughout the night and have more flexible ways of working and need to shop at different times. But trying to work out the buying patterns is important, and clearly every product may have a different buying pattern. Some will only be bought at certain times, others will only be bought at other times. So quite a bit of analysis is required in order to try and work out when sales are likely to happen. Some situations require the need to change customer buying patterns. For example, demand is high for turkey during the Christmas season. A lot of turkeys are sold during Christmas season. But in order to maintain the turkey business, to maintain production and meet costs, turkeys tend to be sold throughout the year as pre-packaged goods, such as turkey slices and turkey products. So in order to try and keep that industry running, different products are offered throughout the year. Let's say turkey-based products throughout the year. So it's important to know when customers buy and try and have the products ready. But as I said earlier, there is a risk that in producing in advance, first of all, it's expensive. A lot of resources have to be paid for up front and sit idle until sales take place. And also, customers' tastes may change in the intervening period. It may be the case that the company is building up a stock of products that are no longer required or no longer wanted. So there is a risk. Customer wants. Well, customer needs and preferences change over time. Customers constantly change. It may be a product of advertising and marketing and different media, better communication systems, and we see what's happening in other parts of the world and fashions and so on. It could be something to do with that, but one thing for sure, customer needs and preferences do change. And our lifestyles today are probably a lot different to our parents, and they in turn were a lot different to their parents. We have changed significantly, and we are continuing to change as new technology impacts on our lives and new products impact on our lives. We tend to change, and we also start to want new products, or we're very keen to adopt new products when they're put in front of us, ones perhaps we hadn't thought of before. Apple and the iPad. There was, in a sense, no demand for such a product. Nobody demanded an iPad. Nobody knew what it was. And when Steve Jobs and his colleagues at Apple developed it, it became a big success. And now we have tablets as a common means of communications and computing. Customers want to be measured by sales records and customer preferences by price range, colour and size. We do have a status thing. We do have a status issue as customers. Brands may be an issue. We want a particular brand because it says something about our status. It says something about who we are and where we are in the community and where we are in society. The brand is expensive. The brand shows us off in a particular light. Sometimes expensive is desirable. It's desirable because it is expensive. People demand a Rolex watch because it's perhaps expensive. Not just a very good product, but also there's an image associated. And if Rolex started to sell watches very cheaply, then perhaps people would find that they didn't want that watch. They wanted an expensive watch because they need to show who they are, their status in society. Conducting market research is a good method of identifying customer needs and their preferences. Sometimes it's the only way in which we can pick up information. But market research has to be looked at very carefully because there are downsides. Sometimes people don't give accurate information, or perhaps the sample selection was biased. There are all sorts of issues associated with market research which can lead to erroneous data being picked up. And if that's acted upon, it could be a disaster for the business. It's working to the wrong information. So market research has to be carefully done. The sample has to be of the right size. It has to be, as far as possible, it should be random. It shouldn't have leading questions. The wording of questions should be sorted out. If it's attitudinal, the scales should be worked out carefully. There are many issues. It's not a cheap option. But sometimes that's the only way companies can gain an insight into customer requirements, customer wants. In order to remain competitive within the market, it's important to analyze customer wants and preferences. That's the only way to remain competitive, is to satisfy the customers, so the customers will buy the product. It's pointless producing a product that the customers will not buy. What's the point in doing that? To produce a product that the customers don't want is committing resources, wasting raw materials, labor, machine time, wasting everything, wasting effort right across the organization, because they're producing a product that the customers simply do not want. So it's important to find out what the customers do want and then try to produce products that meet those requirements. So how do customers buy? Well, the decision-making process is an important element in determining how customers buy and why they buy. So we're here looking at the decision-making process. How do they buy? Why do they buy? So it's a little more almost psychological. It's how do they buy? How do they go about making this purchase? What brings them to make the purchase? At one moment they're happy without the product, and then they want the product. Why is this? So how does this come about? How does it come about that they want the product? The need to buy is influenced by many factors, and the final decision to purchase is dependent on the customer. So it's not an easy thing to work out. At one moment in time, the customers are happy. They're happy without the product, and then they want the product. So something has happened, and the factors that lead to that want, to address that need that they've suddenly developed, the factors are complex. Well, why did it come about? It could come about because of envy of their neighbours. The neighbours have a new car and they want a new car. Or it could be that it's a new food item and they'd love to taste it. Or it's a new product, it's a new gadget, and they'd like to play with it, they'd like to have it and see what it can do. It's complex. It's not an easy thing to work out. The factors that determine whether a customer wants to buy a product or not could be internal or external. They could be inside the person, or there could be external factors that promotes the product and ultimately registers in the mind of the customer that they want the product. Or it could be just that the person is very innovative and just bored and wants to have a new product, internal. Or it could be influenced by the decision-making unit. And we'll talk about the decision-making unit elsewhere. Organizations need to identify these factors in order to analyze customer behaviors. So it's important that organizations try to work out, why do the customers want the product? Try to work out the factors that lead the customers to demand the product, or to have a demand for the product. So let's look at the decision-making process to try and gain an insight into this. First of all, we need to recognize the needs. What are the customer's needs? Try to work out what are their needs. Now, we could use something like Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, and we could say, well, food and shelter, these are very important, and working all our way up to other factors. So needs recognition is important, trying to figure out what the customer needs are. The customers, if they know what their needs are, if they can determine their own needs, they will engage in a process of looking for information about different products. So the customers will search out products. You could look at this from the company perspective. If the company can work out what the customer's needs are, roughly speaking, then they could work out what sources of information are the customers likely to access. So you could look at it from the company perspective as well. But let's just focus in here for a moment on the consumer. The consumer has got certain needs. They need to recognize what the needs are, and then they need to search, look for information about the market, about the products in the market, about how suitable the products are to meeting their needs. And then, having found some products that meet their needs, to evaluate those, try to figure out which one is best. And they'll use various criteria here. They might use price, or they might use suitability, style, reputation, brand, whatever. They're going to look at a variety of criteria and try to evaluate the various amounts of information they've picked up about different products. And based on that evaluation, they should make a decision. And the decision is perhaps to buy a particular product. And having bought it, they will then analyze the product after they've used it to see if it was worth buying, if there were any issues they liked or didn't like, or anything that hit them as highly desirable and they'd buy it again. Or so there's a post-purchase evaluation. Now it's seen as this is the way customers buy. It starts psychologically, it starts in the head, it starts in the customer's head with needs. How those needs arise in the first place, we don't need to get into, but it may be a function of other factors, external factors such as trends, fashions, communications with other people, what they see on television, on what they hear on the radio or read in magazines. It's needs. The needs are derived from some complex source or set of sources. And then they have the information search, trying to find out which product is best for them. Then they evaluate all of the shortlist that they've worked out, and then make a decision, make the purchase perhaps, and then evaluate it at the end. So that could be the decision-making process. So now, how does an organization become customer-focused? Well, customers drive the organization. They are the ones that determine sales growth and profits for the organization. So customers are at the core of what the business should do, what the organization should be aiming at. So it's important that the customer's needs are recognized and products are placed in front of the customers for scrutiny and for evaluation. Organizations must ensure that the customer is key and placed in the center of all the operations. It's imperative that the customer is at the very center of the concerns of the organization. If the organization loses sight of the customer, it's going to make products that are not required. And as I said earlier, what's the point in doing that? They're not going to sell the products. So it's pure cost, no revenue, which means the business will cease to exist. So the customer must be central, must be the entire focus of the business. All business activities and employees are trained to perform a marketing role. For example, frontline staff are the first point of customer contact. They are responsible for encouraging sales and meeting customer needs. So it's crucial that the staff are trained to deal with customers, deal with them politely, and to have information ready, I should say, to pass over to the customer to answer any queries or any issues that the customer may raise. So staff training must be excellent in the context of dealing with the customers. But it should also go right the way through the organization to personnel within the organization who don't meet the customers, but at the same time know that the customers are central and they should be working towards quality right throughout the organization, because that's what's going to turn up at the end. The whole organization should be based on quality and on customer satisfaction. So we have two views of organizations. The old view, where the CEO was at the top and the management was underneath, and the frontline staff, perhaps the marketing staff or the aftercare, after sales service people were next, or whoever. And then they have the customers at the bottom. That was the old view. And that's versus the new view, which is the customer at the top. The customer is the most important. Then the frontline staff, very important. Then the management. And in a sense, least important is the CEO. The CEO is the person who keeps it all together, keeps it running. But in terms of importance, in terms of sales and the profitability of the business, it's the customer that's most important. And the customer deals with the frontline staff. The customer, generally speaking, does not deal with the CEO. So the customer deals with the frontline staff. They're next important. So if you look at the old one, we have the CEO at the top. In this case, the CEO makes all the decisions and the customers are the last tier in terms of consideration. Which, if you think about it, is bordering on crazy. Because the customers are the most important. It's the customers who buy the product and give the business the revenue to enable it to continue and to make a profit. However, in this view, the one we've got here, it's the CEO that's most important. It's the Chief Executive Officer who's most important. Then it's the management, and then it's the frontline staff, and finally, it's the customers. The old organizational structure is a process design. It's a traditional approach that's been used for many years. Less thought has been given to its credibility. So it's been used for years and years. It's the CEO is at the top and it filters all the way down. It's almost a power relationship. The CEO is the most powerful, then the management is next powerful, and then the frontline staff, and finally the customers. But of course it's the customers who keep the business running. So it must be that they are very important, except this model does not recognize it. It's a cascading model. The decision making in this design, the design we're talking about here, is a major disadvantage. The decision making is slow since all the decisions flow from the Chief Executive Officer to the customer. The Chief Executive Officer is responsible for everything, perhaps the design of the product, the marketing initiative, and so on. But it's not sensitive to the customer. It's almost as if the company is forcing or trying to force the customer to buy its product simply because the CEO said it's a good idea, it's a good product. But that's not the way it works, as I keep saying. The customer is seen as low priority in this model. There's no emphasis on what the customer wants, rather that the organization thinks the customer needs. So it's not what the customers want, it's what the organization think that the customers want. Of course, the organization could be totally wrong about their perception of customer needs. And if they are, they're not going to make the sales, and that business is going to go out of business. That business will not exist. Here's the new idea. The customers at the top, frontline staff next, management next, and the chief executive officer, who's still very important and very powerful, obviously. The CEO is the one who holds it all together, but recognizes where, in terms of importance, the rest in this particular context. The new design is action and result driven. The customer is the center of the business rather than the CEO. It's the customer that's the most important, not the CEO. It's the customer who buys the product. There is better decision making as frontline staff and management are encouraged to take initiatives. It's the frontline staff who are next important to the customers. The frontline staff who deal with the customers. They know the customers. They're the ones who can pick up the information and pass it back to production and design and get the products modified and get the products tuned up to be in line with customer requirements. And they understand the customer needs. Frontline staff take more control in customer service and marketing. So the staff build up a trust with the customers. There is a relationship between the customers and the organization. And that's exactly what was required, because now the customers can feed in their requirements to the organization. The frontline staff who deal with the customers can ask some questions about their experiences of using the product and what was the good points about the product and were there any issues that they would like to see developed. And so the product is, in a sense, been maintained. It's been updated in line with customer requirements through the feedback that the frontline staff are collecting. The new design builds customer loyalty, as this approach focuses on what the customer wants rather than what the CEO thinks is best. So it's not one person, the chief executive officer, thinking this is the product, this is what we're going to give them, they're going to buy it. That model is the old model. The new model is the customers tell the business what they want and the businesses make that product. Then the customers are more prepared to buy the product. And of course the business will prosper and exist as a consequence. So these are some of the issues that we confront in the context of customer analysis. And we've looked at a couple of models towards the end. This is an important topic as well, because customer analysis is very important for businesses to conduct. It's very important that the businesses are aware of customer needs and design their products around customer needs. Not try to force the customer to buy something that the business thinks it's a good idea. That's the source that's been used throughout, and that concludes this video, and that's all I'm going to deal with on this topic. So, thank you for watching.